Okay, let's talk about incident response next. This one is really important, and it's the kind of thing that you're going to write and you're probably not going to think about for a long time. But if the bleep hits the fan and something bad happens, you're going to be really grateful that you've thought it through and that you have a process to follow. Incident response, the way we typically structure this section in the policy, and actually we're going to put a resource linked for you down below so you can actually see the language that we use and maybe copy it and use it in your policy, is you want to lay out three key things. One is who will decide whether you actually have a cybersecurity incident or not, right? Who's the person who's going to make that call? And if needed, who are the other team members that they're going to pull together in the event of an incident or to decide whether there is an incident? Second is, what are the steps that you're going to follow in responding to that incident? Who's going to do what and in what order? And I'll talk about that more in a minute. And then the third is, what are some examples of incidents that are relevant to your business that your employees should be on the lookout for? So let's talk through all three of those in turn. First, who's going to make the decision that this is an incident? Typically, that's the security officer, whoever the person was. I'm going to scroll back up for a second, but whoever the person is who owns the policy. And then you also want to list some of the people who might support them. So IT is commonly going to help with incidents. HR is commonly going to help with incidents. If you have an in-house attorney, they're commonly going to help with incidents. You might have an outsourced IT company, or you might have an outsourced cybersecurity company like what we provide. List all of those people and list kind of the rules for how they'll be brought together. If you do have an incident, you're probably going to start by discussing it via email, right? Someone's going to notice something weird and send around an email. I'd encourage you to, as the owner of the policy, I'd encourage you to get people on the phone as quickly as possible. And you want to do that for two reasons. One is that an incident, time is of the essence. Cybersecurity incidents move very, very quickly. And the faster everyone gets on the same page and is able to either decide that this is truly something risky or not, could make a huge difference between whether this is something trivial or whether it's hugely damaging to the company. The other thing is many times incident response exercises can be discoverable, in lawsuits or in the future, or if law enforcement gets involved. So you want to be thoughtful about what you put in writing. Not to say you want to cover your tracks or do anything malicious, but just understand that what you put in writing could later become part of a lawsuit or a law enforcement action. Typically, the decision point is, first someone makes a decision, is this a cybersecurity incident or is it not? If it is a cybersecurity incident, then you're going to define what the group is that you're going to pull together on a phone calls or a series of phone calls to bottom it out, to follow the rest of the process. Don't go too crazy on this. Don't try and build a workflow, because incidents are hugely variable. They can mean lots of different things depending on what kind of incident it is, or they can follow lots of different paths depending on what kind of incident it is. So just generally list the people, list how they're going to get together, but don't go crazy about defining a workflow. Okay, so that's who's going to be responsible. The second is, what's the general process you're going to follow? And again, we'll provide a template that you can look at that shows examples of how we typically structure this. But the general idea, and this is where a lot of companies get tripped up, is first focus on everyone's safety, right? If the building's burning down, get everyone out. Don't worry about root cause analysis or what you're going to do about it in the future. That's an extreme example, but you get what I'm trying to say. So once everyone's safe, second, try to figure out what actually happened. And the reason it's important to do the second, and we see this especially with IT people, is they will often try to jump right to the end, which is, what should we have had in place to prevent this? And that's good. You want to keep track of those things as you're going through the process. But oftentimes it leads you down a bunch of different paths that just don't make sense, because you're trying to solve problems that don't exist because you don't really have a good understanding of root cause analysis. So try to figure out what happens, grab all the logs you can. If there are computers that are doing things like ransomware, take them off the network, shut them down, to preserve what's on the computer for forensic imagers. But follow that cadence. Make sure everyone's safe. Then make sure you have a real good understanding about what happened. And then figure out what lessons you've learned and what you can put in place going into the future. And then the last thing, and we'll provide you with some examples of these in the template we're going to give you. Think through what common incidents are that could affect your company, right? If you live on the East Coast, it might be a hurricane. If you live in the Midwest, it could be a tornado. Those are physical incidents, but they certainly deserve a part here. It could be that someone's account is compromised. A hacker has compromised an employee's account. Could be that you get virus or ransomware on your computer. You want to give people examples so that if it happens to them, they're going to pick up the phone and as quickly as possible escalate it to the right person. Because again, I can't emphasize this enough. Time is of the essence when you're dealing with cybersecurity incidents. So again, check out the resource down below, and hopefully you'll find that helpful as a starting point for your incident response section.